All right. Good evening. Welcome to our first Selectmen special meeting. I'd like to call it to order. So we're here tonight to discuss the House Bill 7067, the assessment of motor vehicles for property taxation, for a couple of reasons. There's been a lot of news about this potential tax break that we could take as a town. And there's been a lot of discussion. I think it's worth talking directly to our assessor in town. I want to have him walk through some of the numbers and kind of answer any questions that you may have. I'm sure there's people out there that are watching as well that want to understand how it affects them. And then we can kind of have a very lively discussion about the pros and cons and how it would affect the town in what way. So let's get started. Rich Lasky, do you want to come up? Hopefully, yeah, absolutely. Just talk loud enough for the people that are trying to hear at home. So if you can.
Loud voice, so sure.
I'm sure we'll hear it.
Partly deaf, probably. That's why. All right, how you guys doing today?
Very good.
How are you?
Very good.
All right, well, I guess yeah, this the new legislation that just passed, I think, on the March 12th, basically gave the town the option to change the depreciation schedule for which we're going to be, for which we priced our motor vehicles, for assessments this year. Basically, just to give you a little rundown. Historically, we've always priced the motor vehicles off of NADA, clean retail value, every year. So there's people always saw a little bit of a a little bit of a depreciation, a little decrease in your motor vehicle tax bill from year to year, especially after 2001 when the state capped the mill rate out at 32.46 mils. Okay, and so we've been holding at that mill rate there for the last 2 grandless years, we'll say. So motor vehicle values do generally depreciate, so your tax bill will go down a little bit per year. What happened, obviously, is, remember, in the pandemic years was the with the shortage of new cars on the lots there, all the used cars, the value skyrocketed. They went up pretty high. So, because there was more of a demand for them. So what happened with that was people got their tax bills and they were higher than last year. And, people, so we had to really try to do a lot of public service to try to tell them, hey, you guys, it's really supply and demand. We don't have control of it. It's something that's an economic kind of thing that's going on. So that's when the state started to try to reform, the way we did, motor vehicle valuations, we'll say, and that's the way they just passed it this year, going for the October 1st, 2024 grand list, a different way to value the motor vehicles. So initially, what they do is basically they're saying, all right, instead of pricing 70% of clean retail value like we've always historically done, the difference now is we're just taking MSRP value, and they basically came up with a straight line depreciation schedule to depreciate them from. So in other words, for like a first year would be the first year start at 85%. And that includes any 2004 model vehicles, 2005, and 2024, 2025, 2006 model vehicles. Okay. So they would be depreciated at 85%. So it'd be 85% of their value. And then we apply the assessment ratio of 70%. And that would be, their assessed value that we would tax upon. So basically you start there. Year 2 would be 80%. Year 3, 75%. It goes down every 5%, down to about the 15th year, 2010 models and older. They're going to bottom out at 15%, So basically that's how the motor vehicle were valued for this grand list right now, using that depreciation schedule. And that's what the legislation has passed for October 1, 2024. So basically that's what was a grand list. Now, this straight line depreciation has some advantages to it. It's very simple to try to comprehend. Actually, we have a would be possible to put up the depreciation schedule that I sent in the email.
This one here? That one
Yep,
up there?
that one's fine. Yep, good. So basically, if you look at this spreadsheet here, you can see how the motor vehicles were kind of if your car was 2016. Basically we're going to take the clean retail value, which would be maybe was $20,000, And, 45%, we're gonna be bringing, down that much, and then by the ratio. That's kind of how you fall with your assessment this year, and in general, I'm seeing a lot of the assessments did go down, from last year, from the clean retail methodology of it. So it was kind of like, it's definitely to the advantage to the taxpayer, at that depreciation schedule. Only problem was our grand list took about a $14 million nosedive on the, because of that, depreciation schedule that was set. So, the cars were down a lot. Our real estate, we went up because I thank God for, the brain replace kind of thing. So we were able to gain some revenue on that for on the real estate end of it. But, our grand list did not go up as much as, you would think it would go up because it's motor vehicle situation that they, we're going to do. So basically a lot of the towns, most of the towns out there had anywhere from 15 to 20%, decrease in the grand list. So we had about 14% on ours compared to last year. And let's see, I think I did the math real quick today, and I said it looks like we're talking about 477,162 in potential motor vehicle revenue loss because of the new statute to kind of be put through on this.
Are you on page 2?
Yeah, I'm on page, sorry. Yeah, so basically, it was a definitely some revenue loss with the way they were being valued, on that. So, like I said, the mill rate, right now is proposing to be about 35.79 mils, with the grand list as it is right now. So basically that's the impact that the legislation gave our town this year. Now basically as of the March 12th, HP 770, 70, that's wrong, 7067 passed. 7067 is the actual number there. And section 7 of that new House bill there gave towns the opportunity to use a different depreciation schedule to value their motor vehicle grand list. Okay. And it basically goes upon, the town's legislation vote on that. We have to decide if we want to do it or not. It's a public option or local option. And then, give us the opportunity to republish our grand list by April 15th, which, wouldn't be a problem with vendors because they have the software all ready to go. They just got to get our approval, and they would be able to do that. Now, the advantage of that would be, well, number one, the vehicles, instead of using 85% at year 1, now we're going to be going to 90%. So we're going to have about 5% on that. In year 2 would be the 85% and so on. So the year 15, the models that are, about 20 years old or so, they're going to bottom out at 20% instead of 15%, which is not a lot of tax money when it really boils down to, especially these older vehicles. They're not really being assessed for much at all right now. So it kind of like really, basically it kind of takes some tax burden off of the, resident. It puts some tax burden back to the motor vehicle side of it by doing this, and basically when I ran the numbers basically on the new depreciation schedules, if you can get the next one up, the other depreciation schedule. It was in that second email I sent. It's probably like a page 2, maybe. Did I get both of them? Yep. Here we go. Both off is Torrington's website or something. What did he say? But the important thing is right here. This shows you basically the modified depreciation schedule, kind of like how we're going to, based on what we do to price the motor vehicles, based upon that schedule. It's not like you're taking 5%, you add in that motor vehicle grand list number. There's much more to it, and basically what it boils down to when you do the math, we're looking to gain with a 9,842,000 of assessment on our grand list, which that was going to from 14% lower, is we're about 6% now lower from last year. So it makes sense. We're basically all it does is kind of redistribute the tax. Basically the mill rate would be able to come down a little bit, so there's not so much tax burden on the residents and the homeowners and the business owners.
Can I or we ask you questions as you're doing this?
Oh, yeah,
Rather
please
go
do.
to the end?
Yeah, you guys have questions? I'm sorry if I'm going
Yes.
quick.
Oh, no, no, no problem, no problem. Question for you too. One of the questions I'm getting asked often is, yeah, it sounds like we're shifting to the 9,000 plus vehicles we have off of the homeowners, residential and commercial. But from my understanding, the net difference is that the net total tax collected is just shifting the tax. It's not adding extra tax anywhere. Is
No,
it the
it's,
net? If you explain that.
yeah, basically, this kind of balances out. It makes the, basically, we're just taking a tax from the residential side of it, from the real estate tax bills. We're taking the tax and we're putting it back towards the motor vehicle tax bills. Now, one major concern, obviously, people are saying, well, I don't want my motor vehicle taxes to go up from last year. Even with that 90%, there's certain, the average tax, the average car tax will still be going down. So won't be going down 10%, but maybe it'll be going down more, 1 or 2%, So you're going to see a little bit of depreciation, still in your car tax on the average car. And at the same time, our, real estate and our personal property tax bills won't be having, they'll have a lower tax rate, lower mill rate to use. So it kind of evens out at the end of it, I think
Well, I think, Rich, I think that part of that is, it's important for the taxpayers to understand the balance in that. Well, if somebody owns, a home and cars, right, the car taxes maybe go up a little bit by doing this, but the house taxes should come down.
yes,
And it's not gonna be 1-to-1 because it's gonna shift, and there are other cars and people who own vehicles that, they're all different states. So it's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that if your car taxes go up $100, your house taxes are gonna go down 100, but there is gonna be an offset. Do we know what can you talk a little bit about what the average impact to a home would be?
yeah. So I think the next on
Page
page
4.
number, Nick, we go back to the right there. I think it's page number 5. That's basically demonstrating just I just took all the single family dwellings in town. And I knocked off the big ones. I knocked off all the little stuff, the cottage kind of stuff. So we got more of a good weighted meat on that. And it was pretty close to 200,000 is our mean or average assessment in town, 200,000. So I took that number to work off of. And then the average class 1 passenger car that's over 20 years old, I took 2004 plus. And then you have an average assessment, we'll say, of the 12,000. I'm sorry, yeah, $12,490. Oh, I'm sorry, that's for last year's.
Not
So-
23.
I'm sorry, yeah, that's 2023. That was last year. So yeah, basically I wanted to compare to last year's taxes, So basically you have your single family dwelling, and you're at the average of $200,000 for your assessment. And then your average car with the grand assesses right now is 11,010. Okay. If you apply our proposed mill rate, which at the time I thought was 35.71. I think it's I'm not sure. I think it's 7.9 now. But anyways, if you looking at something like your taxes for the year for your house is about $7,142, and then your car tax would be about $357. Okay, so you got about $7,500 total tax there. Now compared to last year, on that same car in the same house, you were paying about 7,270. So you can kind of see is about $230 difference between, your tax will be going up just because of the new mill rate, which that's about standard, average I see in town as far as the mill rate, how they work. Now, if we adopt the HB 7067 there, what that's going to do is going to bring our mill rate down for the homeowner. And you can see, the taxes will go down about $60 or so for that, tax bill on the homeowner side of it. And the car tax will go up a little bit, but overall, you're still talking, instead of the taxes raising right now as it stands about $230 on a person, you're $210. So it's still a little bit less, so redistributing that tax revenue to the real estate side makes sense because the real estate values are more valuable. And obviously, they're going to pay more tax on a higher mill rate, when it comes down to it, And You know, that same person's car tax last year, if you notice, was $405. No, down to $494. I mean, you know, so let's see a little bit of decrease. You know, it's not much, but kind of makes sense when you're trying to keep your mill rate down in town. Do something like this, you know, having that option.
So even with 67, it's still over where we were going back a couple of years. It's still shifting more towards house taxes than cars, but making this change would actually moderate that a little bit.
Yeah, it would equalize it out.
It brings it a little bit more towards balance from where it was.
Exactly, yes, yeah. So like I said, right away when the state that and I know I saw a couple different versions of that depreciation schedule, and I always thought it was gonna be 90%. Then when we finally saw the final version that was adopted or voted on with the Senate or with the state legislators, it was 85%. So, you know, right away it was you know, we saw the impact on the Ramlis. You know, so it's gonna be a I just think it'll be easier to have a mill rate of you know, 30, 35, 41 compared to the 35, 79, I think is what we're saying now. Right now, you know, you know, so I would, you know, some people won't see so much, you know, tax increase, we'll say this year. Obviously, we're talking averages, there's a high end, there's a low end, you know, I'm kind of just meeting in the middle right now. So everybody's situation is a little bit different, you know. I did have a report. And this data here, so you know, I took, you know, there was about 2005, 2,657 real estate accounts that met, you know, that was single family homes in town. Out of that group right there, I grabbed that middle kind of, you know, fair market value of 285. It's basically we're right in the middle with those numbers there. And there's about 63% of our real estate grand list. And it works out the motor vehicles I grabbed that were 20 years and, you know, over newer, we'll say 2004 is enough. Motor vehicles for class 1 passengers that we use for an example, that one is about 63% of our grand list too as well. So kind of, you know, kind of substantiate a good portion of our grand list, you know, that we'll draw this information from, you know. So it's not really it's not gonna vary too much from that. If you go to page 4, a couple interesting things on this. You could kind of see how even with the you know, HP 7067 in place there on the last column there, you could kind of see how the class 2 commercial vehicles are going way down. This is the different methodology of pricing them. You know, I'm seeing you know, anything from, you know, 10 to 20% down. This is showing 20% on average, we'll say, for the commercial vehicles. In the class 2 combinations, those are the trucks. They could be commercial, you know, this basically, I think it goes by weight. So, you know, you do see the reduction basically all across the board in the, you know, we'll say in most of the cars. So the tax bills won't be as much as they were last year. The class 8, another in the bottom, that's all the little trailers and, you know, we see construction trailers actually, and the RV kind of stuff. And those ones, you know, generally probably just showing they're going up, but this is probably the way they're pricing differently, you know. There's a lot more to that group there, people. Not to mention, we took off about 500 or 600 residential trailers off their grand list this year because of the new legislation that exempted, you know, trailers for residential use this year. So there's a handful of accounts that people are not getting tax bills this year because it's the residential use trailer. So that's something to kind of keep in mind why that number is up, because we don't have the numbers that we had on that one type of thing, you know, because we didn't assess for them because of the legislation. So
I mean, somebody can live in a trailer on their lot and not pay taxes.
well, when it says residential use, it means not being used commercially. So not so much like a camper trailer. I didn't take those off, but boat trailers, you know, they were very minimal anyways, if we even assessed them at all. Boat trailers were always hard to price. There's a lot of them in this town. You know,
Like
and everybody,
I remember we used to run into the issue in the Board of Assessment with somebody that converted an old thing into a utility trailer to
Yeah,
haul
too.
brush to the dump. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing.
yeah. So like I said, yeah, you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and Well, spend $800-900 on a, utility trailer just for your yard work. Then it comes to my grand list and, I'm looking at the gross weight usually when I'm trying to price these things, and, if I don't know exactly what it is. So, you would run into situations where it gets, overpriced or whatever. They never come in when I undervalue stuff, but something, for the over stuff, they come in or talk to the board.
Right.
That kind of stuff, the legislation says if it's a residential use trailer, meaning you're using it for your yard and you're not using it for your business, it's tax exempt, that, and, snowmobiles, and the other one was, ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, which people don't register those anyways, usually in general, so you don't see too much of those on the grand list. But those are technically, exempt now too as well. So that kind of have a little bit of an impact on the trailer side of it. Other than that, is what it is. And those bills are pretty minimal as they are too. They're probably looking at, $500 assessed tax bill, which equates out to about, $16 on your taxes for the year. And that $500 is actually the new legislation they did put in that cars are registered vehicles, whether a trailer or not, if they're on the grand list or not, to be assessed less than 500. So that kind of helps too, so basically, you get a lot of, hey, I made this trailer, cost me $300. How come you're assessing me for 500? Well, now we have a statute that says, well, because we have to assess everything at least at 500. If it's on the road, it's registered, your minimum is going to be 500 assessment, so that's going to help out a little bit on our end too,
Just quick observation. So line one, total assessment is 106 million in 2023. It would drop to 90 million.
That's where we're at right now.
Right now, which is a 14% drop. I get that. Under HB 706, it's 100 million, but this is for all the cars in town, the 9721, all the vehicles in town. I'm sorry, 9726. Still, the overall average decrease is 5.28%.
Yeah,
Even with HB.
exactly. Yes, yeah. So if we were to adopt this, we're still looking at an overall, decrease on the grand list. It's not going to boost us up over, So I really don't think that people see too much difference in their tax bills.
And the only other two things that stood out to me was for most passenger cars, 6,500 at that 9,700, they'll see 1.9%, between 1.5 and 1.9%. The reduction even with HB 67, but it looks like the biggest decrease was the commercial 2 and 3. I know I had gotten a concern from some of the businesses in town that had said they're worried about what's going to happen to their truck fleets and where they would park the cars, and whether they keep them in Portland or not. But they, even with this potential local option we could take, they're still down at a minimum 20%, 21% off the car taxes this year versus last year. So,
yeah, like I said, just from what I'm seeing from my report, that I've been running, you're not the commercial fleet guys. I mean, the difference of the valuation on those kind of trucks this year comes down to if we're using MSRP value compared to they were based on clean retail before, and the trucks really kind of tricky to price sometimes because we don't have so much an NAD value to pick from. So it just kind of leave us to our own resources to find, what would be a MSRP for this truck. And then I would put like a straight line depreciation on it, and if it made sense, I would just depreciate it 4 or 5% every year automatically. So they were kind of slowly going down. Now with this depreciation schedule, now you got a truck that's 5 or 6 years old, that's or maybe even 9, if we're knocking about 50% off the top of the MSRP value, well, they're already way below what we were previous years, with that other standard depreciation schedule I had on them. So they're actually making out on this because I've only seen the trucks. I had to take a double check. I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe how much these have gone down with this new methodology. And just because the trucks in the past, there wasn't really any value to go from. There wasn't like a clean retail value we can choose from. I would just have to try to find the value the best I could, by all means, whether I'm looking at, see what they're selling for online and taking an average of what I see with the listing price on those trucks, where some people brought in, it's always helpful when people brought in their bill of sales or kind of identified exactly what the stuff was. I would be able to use that kind of information to develop my own pricing methodology. And if it was consistent across across the board, it was no problem, you know. And most assessors, other towns, did the exact same thing I was doing, so it was consistent in whatever town you're in. So that's one thing I'm seeing, that these trucks now using, using the, either depreciation schedule, you're gonna see them down, you know, a lot less than what they were in the past. So I think that'll be a good thing for the commercial end of it in this town, because they'll save a little money in their motor vehicle tax, especially the ones with the fleets.
Absolutely. I passed out to all the selectmen, just some samples of, 8 or 9 of our top commercial, companies in town and ones with particularly big fleets. And most of them dropped significantly. I mean,
Yeah,
it kind of
so-
follows what you have there, because they were concerned about the drop in there, if there was gonna be an increase real or not. So I wanted to make sure that what information I thought was true was inaccurate, so,
Yeah,
and also like we should have that in there in terms of samples.
and just, yeah, and those sheets, like I said, we don't have our final, like, you know, if we were to do this, we don't have the final actual assessed numbers, how they could be run definitely snaps, although they're not really the, used to, tell us, oh, this is exactly what tax would be right now, so we don't know at this point, but that was a general estimate about, you know, what we're looking at, you know, as far as what those trucks are doing, you know, people with multiple trucks, you know. So.
Yep.
I think all in all, it's gonna be a more of a positive kind of thing for Telegram.
If you were gonna explain this to your neighbor. And
Yep.
that, you know, hey, I saw the meeting last night, I heard you talking about taxes and whatever, how would you explain this to your neighbor?
Geez, I would probably say, you know, it's, as long as my car taxes don't go up, you know, as long as I'm not gonna increase them, they are what they are. So, and once, after we get a year or two, I said that most of them should be going down a little bit this year as it is, not more significantly. But, you know, once they get on that, schedule, you know, it'll be 5% every year, so they'll see it, standard depreciation down. Then we're out, they could rock bottom will be 20%, or 15%. You know, and it kind of stays there, you know, for a year. And,
Would it be fair to say that the, with the pandemic, right, it caused a spike, which kind of put things out of balance and people saw them going up. The legislature made an adjustment to try to combat that. They adjusted too much, and this is now bringing it back. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at it too as well, you know. Like I said, I thought it was gonna be more than 20 originally when I first saw it. When I saw what they did, I said, oh, they want even more on it. Oh, you know, so.
Yeah, they shifted it too much towards residential and now
But
they're
I think there was a lot of, you know, feedback from communities about it, you know, and that's probably why they made it special. It should be 70s, you know, 67 there put in place. And plus they also had to, the other thing they passed was there was a veteran exemption they put in place this year too, that kind of had a little bit of an impact on the real estate for service related, totally disabled veterans. That was something where they squeezed that through on, you know, and that kind of had a little bit of an impact on our residential branches. You know, some towns worse than others we weren't so bad, but I heard some, you know, there's towns with a lot of veterans will say, especially down by the coast. You kind of got the brunt of that, but so they basically what they did was the House Bill 77. What it basically does, it clarifies that veteran statute too as well. They passed just because there's a lot of questions going on with that one too as well. So it gave towns the opportunity to go back if they had any veterans that weren't 100% disabled. And they run that program, they were able to readjust their grants accordingly too, so they can refile their real estate one, you know. For us, we wouldn't have to do any other, we'd only be the motor vehicle one that we're adjusting. We're not, you know, we're not touching the real estate numbers, we're not touching the personal property numbers, keeping those the same. Even with the motor vehicle pricing schedule, with our personal property, we have such little cars on personal property that it wouldn't make that much difference anyways. And usually, you know, I basically took the values that they're declaring to us, they're realistic, they look good, you know, so we're gonna keep personal property one as it is, you know, because I'm not gonna worry about changing that one. So.
Rich, have you done any review analysis of towns in our area and which way they went with this?
There's there's been a lot of, my association has a hotline that they basically, somebody brought that question up about a week or two ago, hey, what towns are gonna be adopting this? And, you know, all day long, my computer's bleeping with a new email coming up by, you know, somebody else. And it's about 50-50 right now, as far as what I've been seeing. I can, if you guys want exact numbers, just shoot me an email or whatever it is, I can get that number to you, the tally up to what we're at, you know. But, you know, as we speak, more towns are adopting it, you know, as we go, like every day, you see another one coming up, you know. So,
From what I saw, I know, a couple of local towns have, but the towns whose mill rate was higher than the minimum motor vehicle rate seem to be adopting it in a higher level. One, if it's below it, there seems to be less need to do that. But yeah, I've heard the same numbers, about half out there.
yeah,
The town, and not all of them. And I know some towns have had more urgency in terms of the budget. The reason I wanted to bring it to everyone here and have the folks at home listen is we're obviously in the middle of our budget cycle. In another 20 minutes, we'll be talking about numbers, and we'll be talking about mill rates and how we set them. And my biggest impetus for bringing this, I think, was the reason why HB 7067 came out, that towns were saying that there needs to be a way to balance it out more because of the amount of taxes on homeowners
yeah,
and commercial. So I thought it was certainly important to do that. Other thing too, and tell me if this is correct or not, when I've been talking to people at Adams and wherever I've gone, I've asked everyone that I see what they think about this. And my explanation is that it's just shifting some to the motor vehicles and off the backs of the homeowners, but the total tax that they're paying wouldn't change, right? It's
Yeah.
you know, whatever the increase would be overall because of the additional spending, it just has to be equal up, but it's just a shifting of it. And to me, it seems shifting it to the 9,700 vehicles off of the 3,000 homes and other commercial properties seem to make the most sense, which is why I kind of drove it on this. So that's, I don't know if that makes sense to you, if that's something that I'm telling.
yeah, I mean, definitely, it's shifting the tax burdens to, you know, from the, you know, residential side of it to back to the motor vehicles, where technically was there last year already, you know, and then just with the new system, you know, where we're at. You gotta figure the real estate counts or the commercial properties, you know, going and above, I mean, they're talking big money as far as, you know, higher mill rate goes. So, you know, to try to keep those taxes kind of more at bay with the, you know, model increase, you know, you know, if you can get that through your motor vehicle side of it, you know, it makes sense. You know.
As I understand, the legislation allows a town, if they choose to adopt it, and at the next budget cycle, they choose to revert back to the old plan or the existing plan we have now.
Mhm.
Is that allowed?
I haven't seen anything that tells us not to right now, the way they change things, who knows this time next year, but, you know, I think, you know, whether we adopt it or not, I think if we decided we didn't want to do it next year for whatever reason, you know, there's something telling us not to right now that I can see, that I saw, you know.
I know one of the selectmen also had mentioned assessment, reassessment of the homes out there starting later this year, and the potential impact on that 2 years from now. What the grand list would be and all that kind of stuff. You can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I can't give specific numbers right now.
The revaluation is gonna be for October 1, 2026 is our revaluation date, so. Depends on what the real estate market's gonna be, you know, at that point in time. You know, I'm looking at just the sales going through compared to 5 years ago in 2021. You know, they vary, but, you know, safe to say about 20 to 25%. You know, I've seen an increase on residential properties in town. Yeah, just sales coming through, you know, significantly higher than what they were in 2021. Who knows if we're gonna be able to capture that in 2026 right now, but that's something where, you know, once we get our revaluation company in here, you know, they're gonna be determining what the market is at that point in time for October 1st, 2026. So we'll see what we're doing.
And that would be
Strong, should see, you know, some increase like we did our last reval in 2021.
and that would have an impact on our residents in 2 years, 2 more years from now.
Yeah, so it's, it won't be this fiscal year or the next, be the following, so. Some time right now to do that, but like I said, everybody's start getting all that RFP and all that kind of stuff together within the next probably, you know, couple months or about the fall, so we'll probably go out to see if we can get a company in here to start working with the Rigo.
If this board should decide to do this, a question I've heard also is, you have the capability to handle the paperwork and the necessary work that you have to do in order to meet the bill's requirements?
Yeah, it would, like I said, it was a matter of, we got the approval. Comes out from you guys first, and then I think there's a form we gotta fill out for the state, let the state know that we're going to implement it. And then the other side of it is we just have to let my vendor, our tax vendor know we're implementing, this new statute here, and we'll assume the local option. And, basically, they're gonna do the calculation right there and see what obviously have to check it, make sure everything looks where it was or where it should be, and then make sure the exemptions are still there and all that kind of stuff. And once the numbers look good to me, we'll run it through and we'll republish it around this, And it won't take, I don't think it'll take very long to get those numbers, we'll say,
I've been asking a lot of questions. Hopefully I'm not taking anyone else. Does Lynn or anyone else have something?
Can you just summarize? If we don't do anything,
Mhm.
the mill rate for the cars and the personal property is gonna be whatever we set it at, right?
It's gonna
Whatever's
be,
on the budget.
Mill rate for the cars will still be at the cap.
Okay, and what's the cap number? Is that
32,
46?
mils, yes.
Okay,
So the personal property and the real estate tax bills will be affected by the, whatever the mill rate would be.
okay. And if we change and do this whatever,
HB
HB 7067, then at what rate do we tax the cars?
It will still be the same mill rate. It's still the 32.46.
Okay, but
It's a
because,
depreciation scale.
because the depreciation schedule's different,
Yeah,
less aggressive,
yeah,
yes.
there'll be, there'll be 5% more.
we potentially don't need as high a mill rate on the residential
Exactly,
properties.
yes. Yeah, the extra monies we're grabbing from the car taxes be going towards the, the real estate.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Any other questions while he's up there? Everyone satisfied with what he's told you? Any concerns that anyone has?
You guys ever want any more detail, in my email or stop in my office and show you all my mess of research on this, as far as trying to get everything together. But it's like I said, it's pretty straightforward. I don't really see that much problems enacting it, we'll say, it's a positive.
Rich, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you explaining it.
It's really helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you, Rich.
No problem.
And it's a pretty complicated issue, right? There's a lot of juggling, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts and, the unknown is always a factor on things, but it's like, it's every grandness cycle. Yes, it is too, so.
Yes. Just a couple of last moments, and I'm gonna kind of go around and see what everyone's feeling is on this, but right now, as our budget is in place, that's what we've talked about, it's about 1.49 is the mill rate increase. Without HB 7067, with it, that goes to an increase of 1.11 for a 35.41 mill rate. I personally think it's in the best interest of the town, because of the additional burden that homeowners have shouldered over the last couple of years. This is, and it goes down to, and this is what it is right now. So, right, and it goes down to. Oh, update one, oh. Oh, 1.12, got it. I'm sorry, Tom just said, it's gonna be the updated numbers, it's 1.12 instead of 1.1. 1.11. Slight difference. Thank you, Tom.
What's the percentage?
Get it right.
Is that? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it may change with the budget too, as we're going, yes. 3.27.
3.27.
And this looks like this is. Let's see, updated numbers, we passed a couple of those now. Tom did drop some of these off earlier. The updated number that Tom just presented, so. So anyway, so it makes it a little bit easier. So
I'm sorry, so this, you just handed it just with
is,
The HB 7067?
yes, the only difference is the one you had previous was the mill rate increase would have been 1.11. But with the numbers that Tom ran, it's now 1.12. Versus the 1.49. See that?
That's 3 point.
That's percentage. Well, that is the mill rate.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. So anyways, so again, that's my feeling on this is I think that makes sense, but again, it's, we need to decide as a board.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. So. So if we can go around the table, I'd love to get everyone's feeling on this, what they would like to do moving forward. If the consensus is there, then I'd like to make the motion, but all we need to do is just to agree to adopt the local option based on HB 7067. But if we could start with on my left here.
I think when you look at the numbers, you can see when this was implemented, that there was a pretty significant shift. What is it? It was a higher jump in property taxes than reduction in car taxes. So I think moderating that a little bit is probably helpful.
Mhm.
Especially given the fact that there would be an option if we did note any problems with it,
Mhm.
that we would be able to revert next year.
Mhm.
But it's a relatively modest adjustment back to the middle from where we started, to where we went last year than to now. It provides a little bit more balance and reduces the reliance on just pure property, house residential property taxes or commercial property taxes.
John,
Jim pretty much said what I was gonna say.
he does that
He
often.
does that often, right?
That's why we start with him.
No, for all those reasons, and the big one for me is that if this doesn't work out, we have the ability to pull the plug on it next year. I have to admit, I was wavering, but after Rich's presentation, I think I understand it a little better, and I think I'm leaning towards it.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, I didn't really understand it until tonight, but I am a lot closer to being comfortable with a 3.27 mil increase than a 4.35. So based on that, I think I like the idea.
I think everyone knows how I feel about it. I think it makes sense on a number of ways, as Jim and John and Rick have said.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense. I think it's nice to see the legislature reach back and repair something that they broke. And bring it forward in a way that it's gonna equalize and make it a little bit more fair, how we put that burden out there for all taxpayers.
Bobby?
I haven't decided if I like it.
Okay. And Mike?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards it, also with everybody else. I don't like the evaluation of the cars, like, I think they're over evaluating them, but I think everybody does that out there these days, so.
Mhm.
And I do like the fact that we can revert back next year if this doesn't work out, so.
All right, well, I tell you with that, I'd like to make a motion that the town of Portland adopt HB 7067 going forward for our grand list 2024. I just need someone to make the motion and
You need to be 25.
that's right. Well, it's actually for 2024. They're 1 year behind.
Oh, okay.
So what we do today will be on the last one that was paid was the 2023. Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah, yep.
I just want to make sure. It sounds backwards, but yes, all right.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Second by Jim. Any further discussion?
I think the other clarification rate is the same balance where you're gonna see a reduction in the buildings, if you will, right? Should you see the same offset for the commercial buildings, just like you do in the commercial vehicles?
Mhm.
Because that was one of my concerns, is that if somebody owns more vehicles, you know, you could see that it tilting the other way. But it seemed like with the commercial valuations, the way Rich presented them, it's already providing a little bit more relief, if you will,
Right.
in terms of how those vehicles are getting valued versus how they were getting valued before. And that's important. We need to make sure we're taking care of our businesses.
The only other thing I have, and it's not an amendment or anything to the motion, but I think it's important for clarity, for transparency, and for our Portland residents that maybe if this is approved, that Rich could get something on the town website
Absolutely.
that will explain in layman's terms what this is all about, so folks understand. Kind of getting to the question, Rich, that we asked you, how would you explain it?
Yes, I'll edit my question stuff I made today, quick enough to make it more presentable for the public.
Or whatever, other towns probably have them up too, so.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that if people hear about this, that they can go and look it up and read for themselves. And
Yeah,
understand
like
it.
I said, it'd be good to get out that it's really not gonna, we're not talking, we're increasing tax, but we're just kind of.
Balancing it out a little different. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, as I've said, I agree. I think it's a good thing for the town. I think it shifts it slightly and brings it more in balance. So, all right, we ready for the vote? All those in favor?
I,
All those opposed? All those abstentions?
Me.
All right. The ayes have it. Motion passes.
yes.
All right. Thank you very much for the questions and for spending the time with us. Rich, thank you very much for walking it through. I know it's a somewhat complicated issue, and whenever we talk about taxes and houses and cars and all that kind of stuff, it can be confusing, and no one wants their taxes going up, but I think this will do it. So thank you very much. No pressure. We're sending everyone to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have a minute before the 7 o'clock.
Do you need a
Um,
motion to adjourn?
Please motion to adjourn so we
I'll
have a
make
minute
motion to
break.
adjourn this meeting.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. We got a minute break. Thank you, everyone, for a quick pass.